Hey everybody, this is Stu for Love Yoga Anatomy, and I'm here at Iain Grysak's Shala in Bali, and I'm here like a different type of interview this time, to interview him about this article he's just written. Now, it's a real long name, and I've already got bits of it. I know it's about embodiment, I know it's about the animal. Just repeat for me the name of the article.
Well, the main title was Becoming Animal.
Yeah.
The subtitle, I can't remember exactly myself, but it's I think using Ashtanga yoga and meditation as tools or techniques to cultivate embodiment and organic intelligence.
And so, where is this? This is quite an in-depth article, isn't it? And it's really, I feel when I read it, it's really come from your years of, it's not just something that sort of popped out of your head in the moment. It feels like it's come over years of practice.
Yeah, absolutely. I kind of see it as a summary of all the other articles I've written so far. It's kind of a synthesis and a summary that pulls all the general themes together. And it's something that's been percolating over time. I've actually wanted to write the article for a year or two. Every time I sat down to do it, it just kind of didn't flow, and I ended up dropping it. And then I was just stimulated by a question from a student, which is what I mentioned in the beginning.
And that's how the article sort of starts.
Yeah, that just kind of set it off, and then I found the flow of the article I've been meaning to write for a few years. Just kind of came out.
And can you give people just a little bit of an overview of the article in case they haven't yet read it?
Yeah, so to me it's largely about placing the asana practice that we do in meditation practice into a context that I feel is perhaps a little more relevant for the human species and the time we're in on the planet Earth. We look at 7.3 billion of us now, and the level of technology that we use, and we're living this very disembodied existence. And most people are well aware that we're consuming a lot of the planet's resources, and we're destroying a lot of the other forms of life on the planet. So, I think if you look at the big picture, what's relevant for the human species now is very different from, say, 2,000, 2,500 years ago, which is when the Yoga Sutras and the Buddha's teachings and a lot of the classic spiritual scriptures are said to have arisen. So, for me, the article was about trying to take the asana in the meditation practice and put it into a context which kind of helps us to connect a little bit more back into our organic bodies. So it's more about connecting to biology, connecting to ecology, trying to connect back into our home of the planet Earth.
Because a lot of in the article, I get the sense that you're putting over the idea that we interfere too much with our innate sense of what we should be doing. So we sort of put on layers of either sort of spirituality or anatomy or whatever it might be, and interfere with the basic process of the body knowing best what to do.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So how do you, because a lot of people listening might say, yeah, but what about, we create these patterns that we do and it feels right, but it isn't right. How do we differentiate necessarily between what we think our inner self is telling us, but what is actually just a pattern from what we've been living in or how we've approached the rest of our life?
So I think we have to differentiate between reactive patterns and sort of places of action or understanding that come from a deeper level. Reactive patterns, I think, are sort of learned patterns. That we've taken into our body, taken into our nerves, taken into our mind. And they're just these kind of habitual grooves that we tend to react to the world through. I think when one drops into a deeper place inside, the places I would call instinctive intelligence or organic intelligence or intuitive intelligence, it's a very different place. It's more of an action rather than a habitual reaction.
Is it going to be difficult for us to differentiate though and sense what is reality? So I think you also talk in the article about reality of what it is you're experiencing at the time. How do we differentiate between what we think we're experiencing and what we really are experiencing?
So I think when it comes to the practice, what a lot of people do is they overlay again, these ideas of what they should be trying to experience through the practice. Whether it's a specific alignment principle, or whether it's a specific form of staying with the Vinyasa, or whether it's completing the pose. But again, this is coming more from the mental overlay of an idea, rather than coming from what the body is actually asking for, or what the body is going to allow. Coming from that deeper place inside. So I think, in order to differentiate, the best thing to do is, try to let go of those mental ideas, and try to drop much more deeply into a place of feeling. I think when we're really coming from a place of feeling, a place of sensation, we're going to experience such a body. In almost all cases, that's where the best decisions are going to come from.
Do you think we need to have that meditation in our practice as well? Do we need the two, not just the physical practice, but the meditation to instill that subtlety, I suppose?
Yeah, so absolutely. So again, being trained in a technique like Vipassana meditation, which is, training us to be more aware of the sensations inside the body at cellular and deeper levels, it's going to be very helpful, I think, in the Ashtanga practice. But Ashtanga itself is a very meditative practice. Again, with the Vinyasa, once we learn the sequencing of the Vinyasa, through the series, we can just kind of surrender to that. We don't have to think about, what we're going to practice today, or what we're going to focus on, or which posture comes next. We already know what we're going to do, so we can kind of just surrender and drop into a deeper place, a place of bandha, which comes from breath and internal form. And that in itself, I find, is a very deep meditation. Which again, if we're practicing with that awareness, will bring us into contact with that sensation-based organic internal experience.
And you mentioned the necessity in there to surrender, and you mentioned it in the article quite a bit. To surrender to the sequence, surrender to the practice. But also on the other hand, I remember in the article you were talking about that this idea of surrendering was also maybe promoted by church, by organization, by this, that, and the other. But you make a difference between the two, that necessarily we don't need to be led down a particular path, surrendering that way, but on the other hand, we should be surrendering to a particular type of practice. How do you differentiate between the two there?
Yeah, that's a good question. Again, I think the ultimate place that the surrender has to be put is into ourselves, again, into our organic intelligence. So the idea, I think, the important idea is that, only we can know what's best for ourselves, ultimately. Nobody else can really feel what we're feeling inside of ourselves, therefore we're always going to be the best judges of, what's good for us or what's not good for us. So to me, that level of surrender has to be to the self, ultimately. Now, I think any form of practice or religion or spirituality can either take us away from that, or it can bring us closer to that. So again, to me, an organic physical practice, such as the asana practice, can be a tool to help us to do that. Again, it depends on the context you place it in. I mean, if you're doing the practice because you feel like, it's very important to conform to the system, it's important to conform to the proper vinyasa, because this is going to give you some other kind of benefit, then no, it's not. It's taking you away from that.
Okay.
But if you surrender to the practice because it's a tool which brings you more in touch with the internal awareness of sensation, and by developing internal awareness of sensation, that helps you, develop your intuition, develop the ability to make better choices for yourself, and then you feel that it is something.
How much importance do you place on the actual physical sequence of those asanas that are there? Do you think if it was a different sequence it would be any less powerful, or is it the fact that you're actually doing something in that particular way, whatever it is you're doing? Because this sort of applies as well, not only to Ashtangas, but other yoga practitioners as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Again, I don't think the Ashtanga sequences are perfect, but I think they are extremely intelligently designed. The more I practice them, the more respect I have for how intelligently designed they are. mean, the restructure of the body from the ground up in a step-by-step way. Now, theoretically, there's any number of variations of that sequence that could do the same job. This isn't the only sequence that's going to do that job effectively. But, again, in my experience, because it is a very good sequence and it does do that job, for me personally, it's good enough. By surrendering to the sequence, over the last 15 years, I've experienced all of those restructuring benefits. So personally, I don't feel any need to kind of look elsewhere or make changes for any other reason. But again, that doesn't mean there aren't other sequences which could do the same job.
Yeah.
I think if one wants to use a technique as a way to, again, drop more into an intuitive flow, it's very helpful to have sort of a set sequence like that you don't need to be questioning if that meaningful.
So how do we cope with this idea of listening to oneself when it's maybe in contradiction to surrendering to the practice? Because I know for myself, and I'm sure that many other people out there, maybe that you start doing a particular asana and your body is telling you that it doesn't feel right, that this posture maybe is not for you or whatever. So that feeling's coming up from inside, yet that is maybe the next posture in the sequence. And so part of you is saying, I think we should just skip this one and carry on. And then another part of you is saying, no, you should stick to this and see what's coming and whatever. How do we balance those two and know what's truthful?
Yeah, that's really important. I mean, the whole practice is right there. I mean, it's in situations like that we encounter ourselves most deeply, I think. And everybody's going to come to this point where there's a posture that just isn't working for one reason or another. So it's very important to tune in and to respect that, because again, ignoring those signals is, again, ignoring yourself and forcing oneself into it. Something like that. Physical injuries or overstimulation of the nervous system, psychological issues, etc. But to me, that encountering is actually where the most authentic transformation is going to take place. So usually that means just stopping there. The sequence is stopped. In modern days, the older style is very different. And so again, just practicing up to that point, and then every day encountering that, listening to the body without force. Sometimes there's modifications we can do, to help ease into it, and maybe that's necessary for a few weeks or a few months, however long it takes, and then step by step. My experience is that if people are patient, most people will eventually find their way into the posture in a healthy way. It can take weeks, it can take months, in some cases it can take years.
Decades was the band that I was going to spring to mind. And when you reflect back on your own practice, are there definitely... How long has this feeling been surging inside you? Is it something that you identified with early on, or is it something that has definitely manifested itself as the years have gone by?
It's manifested gradually over time, for sure. I started practice just sort of, I learned traditional yoga philosophy, I learned traditional Buddhist philosophy, and I followed all of that, and I tried to connect that to what I was experiencing inside of me. Sure, I got a lot of that. It's not like I'm trying to reject it.
No. So
they're all very good teachings. But over time I found that, there were certain things that were inconsistent. Like between the dogmas of the philosophies and between what I was experiencing inside. And as those inconsistencies grew, I found I just sort of had to reformulate my perspective on practice and the ultimate purpose of practice.
And another thing that springs to mind is thinking of that, listening to your organic self, because I'm trying to think as well of, as Ashtangis, we're quite used to following sequences, that's that. But there'll be other types of students that will say, well, following your inner nature is like what you might call an intuitive flow. Mm-hmm. So you do like a contemporary dance or whatever, you do what is coming out of you at that moment, and so how do we balance, how does that differ from what you're saying, because they're quite separate, aren't they?
Definitely.
So that's still following your inner nature.
Absolutely. I see those kinds of things more as, I would call it artistic expression, which is, everybody should have a form of that. Just whatever's coming out, follow it, go with it, allow whatever's manifested to be expressed in that way. Now we can have some of that in following a set sequence as well, but it's much less free than, say dance or intuitive flow or anything like that. Following a set sequence, I see is more of, it's more of a form of something that's stimulating deeper self-capture. When we just flow with what's coming out and what we feel like, there's always going to be areas of ourselves that we prefer not to see.
Influence
those are going to be remain hidden. Yeah, exactly.
We'll avoid those sorts of processes
Exactly.
because they're a little bit sort of tough. Yeah.
We'll stay blind to those. So, again, whether it's Vipassana meditation where you're just moving the attention through the whole body and you're not skipping any part of the body, even if there's unpleasant feelings or something, your intuition says, oh, I want to go there, let's avoid that. You still do it, you move systematically through the body, part by part, and try to feel everything that's there. Or with something like the Ashtanga sequence, where again, step by step, you move through the set sequence, and whatever's there, okay.
The setness of the sequence makes you encounter obstacles, which is, one of the reasons for it. So, yeah. So for people that obviously read the article, because it induces, it's not what you'd call a light read, is it? It's quite thought-provoking, and so read the article and think about what that means to you, how you're experiencing it. But for students that want to try and get more in touch with their innate being, shall we say, or their animal self, where is their starting point? If they're not sure, what sort of self-analysis do they need to do? Or maybe is that interfering by doing self-analysis?
I think, again, it's all sensation-based. The more in touch we can get with what we're actually feeling in the body at an organic, sensation-based level, to me that's the most authentic representation of the sun. When it's up here, it can get, pretty confusing, self-analysis in that way. Whatever's going on up here is automatically going to stimulate and be connected to sensation that we feel in the body. So to me, that's the number one thing. Just try to be more aware of sensation, try to be more aware of feeling in all situations. Practice to me is a formal way to develop that. That experience, the connection between, you could say, the thinking mind and the feeling body, thoroughly or deeply. But then that should carry on into the rest of our lives as well. So to me, again, that's how the practice becomes a vehicle for developing a fuller relationship with the planet Earth. When we can connect more to the organic, feeling-based, sensation-based level of the body in the practice, that's going to allow us to be more sensitive to our environment, to the choices we make in our environment, how we influence us. And I think that automatically, creates what you could call more empathy or feeling for other beings. We become more sensitive to how things are affecting us at the sensation-based level. I think automatically we also start to become more sensitive to how our actions influence other beings as well. So to me, connecting back to the body, connecting back to sensation in the body, again, because the body is of the earth, is the best way to connect to the earth.
And I know, in the recent years, how long have you been in Bali now? A year and a half? Or
2.5 years.
2.5 years, wow, time flies, yeah. And do you feel that having moved to Bali, there's definitely a certain energy in Bali? Somebody sort of put forward the idea to me that it's one of the few places that there's still sort of a lunar energy to the place. It seems a gentle, warm energy here. Do you think that has helped to foster these feelings inside you? Or I'm just thinking of those people that maybe live in very hectic, very harsh energies. It's sometimes difficult to actually connect with your inner self.
It's very difficult, yeah. For me, nature's always been, one of my biggest influences in life. I'm from Canada, where we've got plenty of nature, and from a young age, I spent a lot of time in the wilderness. And actually, to be honest, coming to Bali the first year, I found it was very difficult to connect with nature because, in Ubud or in some of the more developed parts of Bali.
There's a lot of
It's like a big
traffic
city
still,
anyway,
isn't it?
right?
Yeah.
But actually, in the last year, I've gone out a lot more to some of the more remote areas and some of the areas where there are still wilderness, and to the rural areas, and for sure, I've tapped into that energy very much more, especially this year. Absolutely. The hiking I've done in the last 2 years, I think, has helped to percolate those ideas.
And you're becoming quite prolific in your writing, I would say. Is this, what's coming next? Have you got ideas like bubbling to the surface all the time?
Yeah, I've got many ideas for articles in my head. I don't like to force things. There's times where I won't write for months and months and months, just because I'll sit down, I'll start, nothing's coming out. So to me, it's usually a specific situation I encounter, whether it's in class or in life, and that situation triggers one of those ideas to manifest the flow of the article. But yeah, absolutely, I've got
You cut the bag.
many ideas I'd like to write about in the future. One in particular is more about Mulabandha, or the concept of Bandha in general. I talk a lot about that in the teaching course and my general courses. I think most people have a very superficial understanding of what Bandha is and how it manifests in the practice. And to me, it's one of the most fascinating concepts.
Good. We're going to look forward to that one. Thanks so much, Iain, for taking the time. I thought I'd just do this one as a little bit of difference, and I'll put it up with the article next to it so you can read and digest. And Iain, I've noticed that you really like comments, you like feedback, you like to get a dialogue going and not afraid to, disagree, agree, that's all cool, so do get involved with the article and give us your ideas, and thanks very much, Iain.
Yeah, thank you.
See you soon.